Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Evelyn of Pink Sheep Design and today we are doing another yarn review. Today we are going to be looking at two different yarns from the same brand that are within the same yarn family. This is ribbon yarn by Hoooked. Right, so I have two different options from their line of ribbon yarn. We have the Ribbon XL, that is the neon family. So it is a completely different section of ribbon yarn that is the neons. So you can see up close, we've got this kind of marled neon look. They have this in quite a few colors. There's neon orange, pink, green, and yellow. I believe that's all of them. And there's a blue. So there's a couple. Let me actually grab those colors and you guys can see the selection of colors. And I think this is all of them. It may not be all of them, but we've got this beautiful marled blue color here and a hot fluorescent pink. And then we've got, I think this one is their lemon color, and I don't know if it even has, I don't think it lists the color. But this is either the green or the yellow because they do have both options, but it's kind of hard to tell just looking at it here and not having, I don't think I have, oh, I do actually, this is the yellow. So here's the green. So we'll look at them side by side. So we've got yellow and green, and that may be all the colors they have. We've got green, yellow, blue, and pink. They are very bright, colorful, happy. I really like the way the colors turned out. It seems very true to the website photos. Okay, so the other one that I got is just their solid ribbon line. So this is the only color that I got in this one. I really wanted to do a comparison because I feel like their neon ribbon yarn is a little bit thicker than their regular ribbon yarn. And that's important if you're working on projects and someone has used the neon or the regular, it may work up a little differently. So I'm super interested. I'm going to do a swatch with both of these so that we can do a comparison together. Now, I think they are made up of the same content. So the neon is 80% high quality recycled cotton and 20% other recycled fibers. You get 131 yards in one skein of this, and it recommends using a 10 to 12 millimeter hook size for this yarn. So let's look at the regular Ribbon XL. This is salad green. This one does actually have a list with the name on here. Some of the XLs, I was going to say this one, yes, some of these do actually have the name. This one says Radical Rose, but it's a sticker, and not all of the ones that I purchased have that extra sticker on them with the color code. So let's see. This one is also 80% cotton, 20% other recycled fibers. It also recommends a 10 to 12 millimeter hook, and it is also 131 yards. So if you're just looking at them on the website, they definitely seem like they would be the exact same, or at least very comparable in their size. I was going to see if I had, oh, I do already have some of this ribbon yarn open, so I'm going to grab that for our swatch. And let's start with an 11 millimeter. We're going to split the difference. Both of these yarns recommend a 10 to 12. So I am going to grab my 11 millimeter hook. Let's see if I've got, oh, yep, right there. Okay. So I've got my handy dandy 11 millimeter hook. These are our 3D printed ergonomic hooks that we sell in our Etsy shop. These are ready to ship if you need a good ergonomic option when you're using your chunky yarn. So let's flip the camera around and get started. All right, we are going to start with our neon, which, by the way, this stuff is super difficult to photograph because it is so neon. So I apologize if it looks a little shiny and bright in the video. But we are going to do a quick swatch. And again, I'm going to use my 11 millimeter hook. And I did want to also do, so Usually in my reviews, I will do a wraps per inch test, but I have to say, I feel like it's kind of difficult with ribbon yarn because, you know, if you just do the flat side or if you just do this side, it's kind of hard to really know exactly how many wraps per inch this should be. I think you can kind of cheat the system a little bit and try to squish it in there, because the thing is, ribbon yarn wraps in on itself. So I'm actually going to twist it for a couple of these and see what happens. So at that point, I can get 4 wraps, but if it's wrapping up on itself, I might be able to fit a 5th one in there, because again, this stuff tends to twist as you work with it. So that's why I do put this in a super bulky category, especially this neon yarn, the neon one from Hoooked. Now let's try it with the regular yarn real quick. Let's pull from the center for this one. All right, so if we do this, let's see if it feels the same for this one. And I am going to allow it to twist a little bit as I wrap it. So there's 3, 4, and same kind of thing. If I wanted to push that over, because I know it's going to wrap up on itself, we also get 5 wraps per inch for this one. And I think that's pretty fair, but again, this stuff's tricky because it likes to see how it's already starting to twist up on itself. Now, I don't fight that. If I'm using ribbon yarn, I allow it to twist. I think it adds a nice different texture to the project. But I think you're going to drive yourself crazy if you try to keep it from twisting. So, all right, let's try. Again, this is an 11mm hook. Now, I have used everything from a 10mm hook all the way up to a 15 or 16mm hook with this yarn. All of it works well. It's usually very, very easy to work with. Obviously, you're not going to have any type of splitting, since it is that chained ribbon structure. And then a lot of these ribbon yarns, because they're a cotton or a cotton blend, they have a nice give to them. So to me, when yarn has a little bit of give, it makes it easy to work with. You know, you don't feel like you're struggling against the yarn. So I do like that about ribbon yarn in general. Again, I feel like this yarn, this neon, I've enjoyed working with this neon yarn probably the most out of any of the ribbon yarns that I've tried. I think because to me it does feel a little bulkier, maybe something about the way that they process this yarn. I just really, really like working with it. So that is an 11mm hook. So again, you guys can see, again, these are our 3D printed hooks that we sell. And that is what it looks like, a single row of or a first row of single crochet. So we'll do a second row of half double so you guys can see. I think that the stitch definition is actually really nice with this. Again, it's a different look because of the twisting of the yarn. It gives it a very different texture from a lot of other yarns, but I think that's kind of nice. I mean, you know, can't do the same old all the time. All right, the half double crochet with the smaller hook is a little more difficult, but I think some of it too is, there's always more pressure when you're doing it on camera. All right, so we'll finish this row. Now keep in mind, I am a bit of a tight crocheter. So you may get a similar result if you're a looser crocheter by going down to a 9 or a 10mm hook versus an 11mm hook. And again, this yarn recommends a 10 to 12. So I'm right in the center. And this is what you are left with. Now, this is kind of middle of the ground chain structure, because if you were trying to make something like a bag, you might want a tighter stitch. You know, if you're worried about these holes that are formed, you might want to work with a tighter like a smaller size hook than an 11 millimeter or 10 millimeter. You might even want to go down to like an 8 or 9 millimeter hook if you're trying to make something that you want to have that super, super tight stitch structure. Now, if you're making something that's a wearable, for instance, you might want that flowiness that you're not going to get even with this 11 millimeter. It's going to be a little bit stiffer. If you want it to have a little more flow, you can go up a couple of hook sizes up to like a 14, 15, 16 millimeter hook. And I will do a swatch and show you guys the difference, what that looks like. But let's go ahead and work one up. Let me do one more row of single crochet here so that we have a bit of a comparison. And we're going to put this side by side using the same hook with their regular ribbon yarn. Now keep in mind, if you're using super bulky yarn, make sure you're stretching and taking breaks. It definitely takes a different toll on your hands when you're using this heavier weight yarn. All right. And especially if you're doing super tight stitches. It's really important to take those breaks. All right, so now let's move on to do the same thing. How many stitches did I do? 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so I'm going to chain 11 with this new one. And to me, this already feels thinner. It feels stretchier to an extent. Actually, like if I'm pulling this way, it feels stretchier. But I think this might have a little more give. I think I'm just fooling myself. I feel like they probably have the same amount of stretch. All right, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, let's work back across. I'm going to do my first row of single crochet. I think I always struggle the most with this first row because there's not a ton to hold on to when you're just working back across your chain. Sometimes that can be difficult for me. I don't know if I'm the only one. Now this yarn is actually pretty soft feeling. It actually feels to me even a little bit softer on my hands than the neon. So that's nice. And that's why, you know, ribbon yarn, I don't think a lot of people think about using ribbon yarn for wearable items, but I'm a really big fan. So for like a spring or summer like cardigan, like a sleeveless cardigan, oh, and we're going to go back with half double crochet. But if you guys look at my sunshine cardigan crochet pattern, that one calls for 2 strands of ribbon yarn held together. You can get away with 1 strand, but you're using an 18 millimeter hook. So sometimes gauge can get a little tricky when you go up that far up on a hook size. But I'm a big fan of using ribbon yarn for some spring and summer wearable items. I think it's really nice. And obviously it's cotton, so it's a lot more breathable than a lot of the other super bulky yarn options out there. So it is the top of my list when the weather warms up for projects. All right, we've got one more pass of single crochet, and then we're going to do a side-by-side comparison between the hooked solids, which is what I'm using now, and the hooked neon. Now, the hooked also has one more type of ribbon yarn, and that is their Lurex ribbon yarn, which I believe, I have not purchased any, but I believe it is very similar to the neon in the feel of the yarn. And I believe if the neon is bigger, works up a little bit bigger, so does the Lurex. And yes, immediately you can see the difference. All right, so if I line this up right here on the edge, so I'm going to put my hand here, line this up, this neon is longer. Right now it's not a whole lot taller. You can see it peeking out a little bit, but this neon definitely works up just a teeny bit larger than this one. All right, so that's something to keep in mind if you are using it. I would need to size down and use a 10mm hook to get the same as I did with this one with an 11mm hook. But it's a really nice stitch structure. Again, it's going to flip on itself. It's going to be kind of funky. But I'm a big fan of ribbon yarn. I have to say, the more I've used it, the more I've really, really enjoyed it. So let's do a quick swatch using a larger hook size. Let's use a 15. So this is one of my 15mm hooks, and we are going to do another swatch. And I'm going to leave that one. We'll just start it right here. So these will be attached. I'm going to move these out of the frame so that it doesn't try to focus on them. And we'll do the same type of swatch that we just did. But you guys will be able to see the difference in the type of fabric that is created when you're using a larger hook size with this yarn, which I think is really nice. Again, if you're making something like a wearable, you can use this larger hook size and create a more flowy type of fabric with your crochet. So I'm going to do 1 row of single crochet. Oh, am I doing half doubles? I am. We'll go ahead and roll with that, and I'll do a row of single crochet after this. I tend to go on autopilot. I love half double crochet. It's probably hands down my favorite stitch to use. So I think sometimes my brain just goes straight into autopilot and half double crochet. All right, so that is my first row of half double. And let's flip it, and I'm going to do single crochet across this side, and then maybe we'll do a double crochet after that, because I have not shown you guys double crochet with this yarn yet. I think that'll be nice to see. I also like to use larger hook sizes for super bulky yarn because it keeps you from feeling so clenched when you're working with the hook. You know, when you've got that really, really, really tight stitching, I feel like it causes us to tense up and squeeze the heck out of our hooks, when it's nice to just be able to relax and create the larger stitches and use the larger hooks and you know, not have quite a death grip on our hook. So now I'm working some double crochet stitches. You guys can see what that looks like. Now this is the size hook and the yarn that I used to create my Vegas jacket, and I will show you guys that jacket before we go so you guys can see a project that I actually finished using this yarn, which I think is always really nice with yarn reviews if I can show you something that I've made using the yarn. But I used this size hook, a 15mm hook, and I used a combination of hooked neon, this specific yarn, and hooked solids to create the Vegas jacket crochet pattern. All right, so let's look at the difference. This is the 15mm hook. Obviously, there is a lot more of a flow to this fabric that is created. Now, it's also larger holes, you know, so you wouldn't want to make like a shirt you're not going to wear anything under. You know, you'd want to make it like a swim cover up or some kind of cardigan like that. But you guys can see the difference. This is the 11mm swatch. This is the 15, and it's not a huge jump. I mean, if you set these on top of each other, it's not that big of a jump from one to the other, but it makes a big difference depending on what you're creating, on what you're going to use. So this was 15mm, this was 11mm, and this is 11mm here. And again, this is the hooked Ribbon XL in solid colors versus the hooked Ribbon XL in the neon bright. So let's take a look really quick at something that I've already made using this Ribbon XL by Hoooked. All right, guys, this is my Vegas jacket. And as you can see, I used the neon pink and orange colors as well as the solids for the front border. And it has a nice waistline here created with this jacket. They have the it has the bat wing style sleeves. I'd never done a shape like that. Super, super happy with how that turned out. And then you have the option on this pattern to add the front tie. So I pull this together, and I probably should have made the smaller size for myself to give it even more structure here. But this is a 15mm hook, worked with both of these yarns. So I'm super happy with how this turned out. I can't wait to make more items with the ribbon yarn to show you guys. I can show you one more thing. Let's see if I can grab it out of here. Now, this is not hooked ribbon yarn. This is a different ribbon yarn, and it is a thicker yarn. This would work really well for the neon hooked yarn, maybe not as good with the hooked solids, but if you purchase the neon, this is a great pattern that you can create using the thicker ribbon yarn. And you could still get away with it with this one. This is a larger piece for me. This is called the Sunshine Cardigan. If I were to make it again, I'd probably make the smaller size again. This is a little more oversized, but some people love those oversized sleeveless cardigans. It's got the slit in the side. You can also choose to sew that up if you don't want a side slit. But it's very flowy, you know, for being a ribbon yarn. You know, it's still cotton. It'd be a great swim cover up. You could even sew up the front here and make yourself a little waist tie and have a nice swim cover up. But as you can see the structure, this is an 18mm hook. So even more airiness and lightness and less of a dense fabric than if you're using the 11 or the 15. So this is a jump to either an 18 or a 19mm. I think 18, might have been 19. I'd have to go back and check the pattern. But I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, please be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you don't want to miss any future yarn reviews, tutorials, or other yarny shenanigans. And until next time, happy hooking!